Welcome to another episode of the Marvel Masterworks podcast. As always, I'm your host, Adam, and with me is my co-host, Donnie, the Venom enthusiast.
Hey, what's up, Lantern fans? It's the man whose ring runs on fanboy energy, the podcasting machine, the big nerd in green. It's the Emerald enthusiast, or the Venom enthusiast, asking you the question: what kind of situation would happen if Killmonger had saved Tony Stark? There you go.
And it took you exactly less than 30 seconds to come up with a pun.
Exactly. We do dad joke humor at an expert level here, so.
Yeah, like I said, I've only seen more dad jokes in succession, probably in Jungle Cruise.
Ah, what a beautiful film.
It was so much fun. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
But this is not the Jungle Cruise cast. It's the Marvel Masterworks podcast. So we will discuss, as Donnie was saying, what if. Donnie, do you want to, well, you know what? We'll save that for the other show that we're going to record. The comic-centric show. But for now, we'll go back into we'll just stick to what if. Okay. You'll know what I mean. When you see, you by the time you're watching this, you've either seen the episode I'm talking about and heard the news we're talking about, or you'll see it in an upcoming episode. So
right. So make sure you stay tuned right here on the
Multiverse. Tuned, subscribe, like, all that good stuff.
On the Multiverse Musings Vidcast.
Share it with your friends. And now he's doing the people's eyebrow.
5-second photo op.
That's the DC podcast because he's Black Adam, Donnie. By the way, I'm breaking the rules because this is such a nice shirt. And I'm wearing a new Batman shirt.
I love it. Yes.
Jim Lee art, by the way. And
every comic book fan loves Jim Lee art. And
Yellow Oval.
Yes.
Team Yellow Oval for the guys, for Peter Vera and those guys over there. But anyway, I was going to wear like a Black Panther or my Daredevil shirt, but those are short sleeve. And I'm in Canada and it's starting to get friggin' cold today. So I ain't wearing no short sleeves.
Okay.
I don't care if I'm going off-brand. I'm wearing a long-sleeve shirt. But anyway, what if I was wearing a long-sleeve DC shirt? Here's what would happen.
Exactly. That's the other episode we're going to talk about.
Right. So that would be a crossover episode of all crossover episodes. What if DC characters crossed over to the MCU? Imagine that animated episode.
Yes.
I'd watch it.
I mean, if you talk, there have been some crossovers between Marvel and DC. And they have just been wonderful, and I would love to see some of those things put to animation.
Yeah.
Heck, I'd love to see the Amalgam universe put to animation.
Oh yeah, I think I have a couple. I think I have a couple of those.
I have quite a few of those. Yeah.
Maybe we'll have to do a comics discussion on those at some point. Good idea. Well, thanks for putting it into the ether, sir, so that I can.
There you go. All right.
I can now plan an episode around that. But that's not today. Today is What If. So tell us, Donnie, what was the first episode up?
So the first episode we're talking about is What If Zombies? That's the name of the episode. And, of course, this is based on the popular mid-2000s series of What If, or the mid-2000 series, Marvel Zombies. So, although this has obviously been adapted to fit the Marvel Cinematic Universe continuity. This didn't go off into a completely different continuity.
Sure. Yeah, right.
So it opens up with Bruce Banner coming back to Earth. This is like a point in Infinity War, like right after he had gotten beaten by Thanos. He comes to Earth, and it's seemingly a familiar scene. But then we see, once he gets up, he's about to be attacked by the Black Order, and he's saved, quote unquote saved. But in the middle of all the smoke from the battle, we see that the people who are saving him, it's the Avengers, but these are zombified Avengers.
That was a really cool. First of all, I like the way it starts where Infinity War kind of picks up, right? That opening. Yeah. And then I like how when he goes out in the world and he's attacked by Bruce is attacked by zombies. I like that, like you said, he's saved by the Avengers, and you see their silhouette, their shadow.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't automatically know what's happening.
Right.
And then when you see them as zombies, it's pretty freaky.
Definitely. And as you can see, they are zombified, but these versions of, the Marvel zombies, they retain some element of who they are. They retain their power set, and they have like some idea of who they are, even though they don't speak.
Yeah, because if it was like The Walking Dead, I don't think. And again, I'm not a zombie person. Like, I don't. For frame of reference, any kind of horror that I like is like the classic Universal monsters.
Oh, okay. So you like old school?
I'm old school in that regard. Like, I don't like Saw, Jason, Friday the 13th. None of that is my jam. That's all Steven. Like, Steven likes that stuff.
Right.
Nah, that's not me. The only reason, for context, the only reason I went to see I Know What You Did Last Summer is because Sarah Michelle Gellar was in it.
Yeah, and she is. I know where you're going.
As everybody knows, or if you don't know, she's on the list. Furthermore, she's on the Hall of Fame list.
Hall of Fame list. Okay, yeah.
She gets 2 clicks.
Right. So wait a minute. Does that mean that there's 2 versions of you that are married to her, or you just have you've been married to her for like 20 years or something?
Well, what happens is, like, if she has anybody on the Hall of Fame list takes precedence, right? So if I have to be called away, like if I'm on one universe,
okay,
and the prime version of me, which I like to think is this one, this poor sucker, if he gets called, like if I'm traversing one of the multiverses, and she rings me up on the bat phone, right?
Right.
Like, if one of the Hall of Fame wives calls, I gotta jet back to that universe, right? Where otherwise I'm a free roaming spirit. I can go wherever I want. I can philander with whichever wife I want. That's my headcanon, but this is all insanity anyway.
Let me ask you this then: if you're the prime version, why haven't the other versions hooked you up with your perfect girlfriend here, because they would know what this version of you wants in a lady? So
you know what? You know why? Because they're selfish pricks. That's why.
Oh.
Because I can't be in this universe. I can't be tied down to just one potential, of the multiverse. Well, I have to be available for all of them. So I have to be the traveler. I'm the traveler, folks.
Okay. Yeah.
And I go around and I'm like Santa Claus.
You're like
I go around and make visits.
The Tempest Fugonaut from DC.
Yeah, like Santa Claus. I slide down the chimney.
Okay. So back to the show.
This has nothing to do with What If.
We already got derailed.
Our audience is like, what if this guy wasn't delusional?
So Bruce gets saved by Hope Van Dyne and Spider-Man. And so we see that within a couple of weeks, there's a group of survivors. And of course, it's Bruce, Hope, and Peter. The Cloak of Levitation also plays a role in the Cloak of Levitation, plays a role. Bucky Barnes, Okoye, Sharon Carter, and Happy Hogan, they are part of this group that are headed to Camp Lehigh for a possible cure. So then what happens is this becomes your basic, kind of zombie survivor film, only obviously with Marvel characters and superpowers. So they actually all jump on a train, and we see that they are attacked by various Avengers. And I liked a lot of that part of this episode. What did you think?
I do like the sort of ragtag group of survivors. I like that in the last few episodes, Hope is getting a lot of play. I mean, in the one with Hank Pym, it was more verbal recognition and representation. But here now we're seeing a version of her, and and I dig seeing her around. And also, it's worth noting that Evangeline Lilly did the voice.
Yeah.
Which it's also worth noting that Evangeline Lilly is on the list.
So I also liked, one of my favorite parts of this was, Marvel, the what if makes sure that they do plenty of nods to the continuity. Even though it's alternate timelines, they make sure that certain events are mentioned. And I like the fact that, the zombie Captain America jumped on the train. And you remember from the first Avenger, Bucky said, I'm with you till the end of the line, pal. And then in the Winter Soldier, Captain America said, then finish it because I'm with you to the end of the line. In this one, Bucky said he looks at the zombie Captain America and says, I guess this is at the end of the line, pal.
Yeah.
And I like that they kept that little nod to those movies. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I liked about this episode?
What was that?
Uncle Ben is mentioned.
Oh, yes.
Oh, my God, an Uncle Ben reference.
Mm-hmm.
I almost fell out of my chair like the Vince McMahon gif when I heard Uncle Ben. I'm like, oh, what? And then they had to ruin the moment with Tony Stark's name right afterwards.
Right.
It's like, look, can I go on a mini rant for a second?
Go ahead.
I like Tom Holland as the actor for Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. I really do. I even like most of Homecoming.
Mm-hmm.
My issue with MCU Spider-Man is he is too dependent, or maybe that's the wrong word, but too absorbed with Tony Stark. Like, we know that he was Spider-Maning before he met Tony Stark, right? We saw a clip of that. We saw him sort of creating the web fluid, while he was in science class. He's under the desk creating the web fluid.
Yes.
But so they show you flashes of, look, this kid is really intelligent. But then they've always undercut it by Tony Stark gives him a better suit. That was a traditional Spider-Man suit. So I'm like, at least it's traditional. Then they gave him that armored Spider-Man suit, which is, in case you didn't know that he was Spider-Man's, underling. Look at this armored suit he's wearing. Like, to me, Donnie, it's too much. There's too much of Tony Stark is the de facto Uncle Ben. Mm-hmm. And like, look, I don't need to see Uncle Ben die again. Just like I don't necessarily need to see the alleyway scene where the Waynes, Thomas and Martha.
Why'd you say that name?
get mowed down by Joe Cho. I don't need to see that again. But with Uncle Ben, he needs to have a presence. Mm-hmm. He needs to inform how Peter Parker proceeds in life, how he's superheroes, so what I'd like to see are maybe flashbacks to when Uncle Ben was alive, giving him advice. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily the great responsibility, great power, great responsibility, but other advice that he flashes back to when he needs to make a decision as Spider-Man. Like, I'd love to see that. But he's reduced to what? A couple throwaway references in Homecoming and Far From Home. And now this reference here. Like, it's just like, this is what frustrates me about MCU Spider-Man. So I just had, because he mentioned Uncle Ben, I had to take the opportunity to let that all out. But go ahead. I liked it. It was nice to hear Uncle Ben's name.
I remember a lot of, really hardcore Spider-Man fans saying that in the build-up to Spider-Man coming into the MCU, they were worried that too much of his character would be predicated on Tony Stark. So what you're feeling, I don't think is unheard of. So, yeah. And again, I'm not saying that I dislike this version at all. My issue is that every time Spider-Man gets reset cinematically, they always have to make him young again. It's like there's some objection to Spider-Man being too far out of high school.
Well, Donnie, look, I I'm excited for No Way Home,
mm-hmm.
but it's the potential prospect of seeing the other two Spider-Men that has me excited about. For like, that's great in a way because you're playing on my nostalgia,
mm-hmm.
but it's also not a good thing because I should be more excited about seeing Tom Holland again.
Right.
And that's not the case. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I will say this though, with every installment, he's definitely grown up some. So I hope that someday we see, a full-fledged adult Avenger. So.
What I'd like to see, and then we'll get back to the episode, but so there are two scenarios that play out in my mind that I'd like to see.
Okay.
Let's say that all the speculation and all the rumors are true, that we've got both Toby and Andrew back, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see. I think Toby needs a proper send-off, so he sacrifices himself for the other two guys, for Tom Holland and the thing.
Okay.
I have two ideal scenarios. Ideal scenario number one is Tom Holland stays in the MCU and does the MCU stuff, and Andrew Garfield does the Sony Spider-Man, so the Venom, the Morbius. Like, whenever they need a Spider-Man,
mm-hmm.
Andrew pops up.
Okay.
Right? That's scenario number one. Scenario number two is that after this, because there's speculation that after this third film set in high school, there's going to be another Spider-Man trilogy of him off to college.
Okay.
If that is in fact true, can all the Avengers cameos stop for the college years? The mentoring part of it.
Yeah, I don't want to. I wouldn't want him dependent completely on the Avengers if he had his own trilogy. So.
Right. So that's my hope. Those are my two hopes. But anyway, we'll save that for when we eventually revisit Homecoming and Far From Home. But yeah.
So back to the episode, not issue. I got ready to say issue.
I knew you would.
We both do that a lot. Anyway, so it's explained that it's actually Hope's mother, Janet Van Dyne. She contracted a virus in the quantum realm, and she then infects Hank Pym with the virus, who then brings it back to Earth. So we eventually, all of these characters, they get to the camp and they find Vision, who says that his Mind Stone can reverse the virus. And as kind of a display of this power, we see that he's actually kept Scott Lang, the second Ant-Man, he has kept his head alive in a jar. Kind of remind me of, Al Snow with, the head thing, but However, we also learned that Wanda Maximoff, and remember, Vision and Wanda Maximoff are a couple, that she's immune to the cure. And Vision has not been completely honest with the survivors here. And we see that he's actually been feeding pieces of T'Challa to Wanda. Now that's dark, man.
You know what's funny is they had me. I totally bought the idea that that Vision was on their side at one point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it seemed that way. I mean, Vision is not somebody who is, prone to that kind of deception. But again, alternate timeline, and he also we saw in WandaVision that he is deeply in love with Wanda.
And that holds true even though she's a zombie. And let me tell you, zombie Wanda is scary.
Yeah, exactly.
Like look, as our viewers, our listeners can probably surmise, many women make the Multiverse wives list, right? Clear. And of course, Elizabeth Olsen has mentioned many times on the list. However,
right.
I think I draw the line at zombie. Elizabeth Olsen.
I would hope so. She was terrifying looking. The animation in this again,
and her
this
power
has been,
set.
yeah,
Like add her power set to zombie, and you've got yourself one hell of a
yeah.
You know,
well, speaking of, hold that thought because we're about to come to that. So, what we see is that Vision actually commits suicide by pulling the Mind Stone out and gives it to Peter Parker. And now they get Black Panther and they're going to go to Wakanda. And they think that they can do something there to battle the virus. So to make sure that they get a chance to take off and get past all of the zombies, including at this point, Wasp is now a zombie. So the Hulk actually comes into play, and finally we get to see the Hulk have a battle with another powerful being and doesn't get jobbed out.
Badass Hulk is back.
Finally. Yes.
Finally, the Hulk has come back to being a badass.
So the episode ends with T'Challa and Scott Lang, his head, and Peter Parker, and the Cloak of Levitation. They make it to Wakanda, but guess what is waiting for them? Or should I say, who is waiting for them? It's a zombified Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet. So things don't end well here either.
That's going to be problematic. I'd imagine. I don't know if we're going to see that, but that would be problematic.
Yeah.
I loved how, Wasp got big and was just swatting away those zombies like they were flies.
Yeah, yeah.
And, in event, sacrifice was, she knew she was going to die, so she's like, whatever, okay, if I got to go, I'll go swinging. And same with the Hulk. I mean, the Hulk, technically, that's not going to kill him. Right?
Right.
Because once he turns into the Hulk, it sort of neutralizes.
Well, that's what, I wouldn't think that the Hulk could ever be, at least not transformed by anything viral for very long.
Right. But again, it just to see him Hulk up, Hulk out, Hulk up, I was thinking about Hulk. Oh, good Lord. Everything's getting jumbled in here. My brain can't take all this stuff. Wouldn't that have been
funny though? Had all the that scene where all the zombies rushed on top of him, if he pressed them off and went
a big boot for all the zombies.
Exactly.
I kind of want to see that now.
So yeah, that would be awesome. So what would you give this?
The WWE and Marvel team up.
Yeah. What would you give this episode?
Well, by the way, before we go to that, what we would give this episode, that end speech by T'Challa. Okay, that.
Yeah.
You talk about getting emotional.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't want to say, before we get to the rating is, again, hearing Chadwick Boseman, every time I hear that voice now, it just, he meant so much to so many people. And when I hear that, it just makes me so sad, and that we won't get to hear his voice and see his talents for decades to come.
And just the saying about talking about there's got to be a light at the end. There's got to be the world needs some hope and all that. Just it was extra powerful. So I appreciate these episodes for that. I in terms of my rating, like I said, I'm not a zombie fan by any stretch of the imagination. Mm-hmm. I'm not really a horror fan in the sense of like horror as in, I'm more classic, Frankenstein, the Mummy, Wolfman. That's my jam. The mermaid, the fish guy.
The creature from the Black Lagoon.
Thank you. Yeah. Like that stuff I like, but when it comes to horror, by the way, and of course, I'm good with vampires because Buffy and all that jazz. So I'm good with
Blade,
vampires,
of course. Yeah.
Yeah, Blade. Yeah, thank you. To keep it Marvel. But Underworld, Kate Beckinsale. But they need to get. But side note, Marvel, can we get Kate Beckinsale either in a Marvel thing or a DC thing, please? Mm-hmm. I don't know where, I don't know who she'd play. Just do it for me. Like I don't care. Basically, I don't care who she plays. Just get her in one of these franchises for me.
Right. Speaking of,
give me what I want.
All right, Batista. I also have to say, there was a speech on the train, and where I believe it was Hope who looked at Peter and said, "How do you stay so hopeful? The world needs that. How do you stay so hopeful?" And of course, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, Blue Ring, but that's a different franchise. So anyway.
Yeah. So me not being a zombie fan at all, and really not being much of a horror guy, I'm going to give this episode a perfect 5.
Yeah, likewise, there's not much more I think we could have asked from this. I think they took the concept of the comics Marvel Zombies and integrated it with the Marvel Cinematic Universe just as well as it could have been done. So,
now, Donnie,
yes.
My question is, before we move on to the next episode, if they made this into a live action, would you be down for that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm a huge fan of The Walking Dead, both the comics and the TV series. So I would love that. To me, that's two of my favorite things is, zombie media and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I would love it. Now, my question is, could you do that at a PG-13 level? I don't think so.
Yeah, they'd have to. But Mark Millar, who created the idea of Marvel
I've seen his quote,
said that they're planning something live, or from what he's hearing, they're planning something live action. So
I would be, like I said, I would be down.
Listen, if they're going to do Deadpool at some point, then clearly they're open to R-rated stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so likewise, again, I'm going to give it a 5. I thought it was a lot of fun. So the next episode is what if Killmonger had saved Tony Stark? And we see kind of almost, I would say, the genesis event for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that is Tony's convoy being ambushed by the 10 Rings. And in Afghanistan...
From the first ring to the last.
Yeah. So... I like rings, just in case you didn't know. Anyway.
Yeah, but which one? Lord of the Rings or Green Lantern?
Exactly.
Both?
Exactly.
Both are good?
I like the torchbearer of the rings, but I digress. That's a different podcast. Anyway, so only in this storyline, in this timeline, I should say, Tony Stark is saved by Eric Killmonger Stevens, as we know him.
Right.
And that sets the entire Marvel universe on a very different path.
Yes.
So we actually see him later on. Tony Stark goes back. He holds his press conference at Stark Industries, and Killmonger exposes Obadiah Stane in the ambush. So we never get the conflict between Ironmonger and Iron Man. So things start to, go on a very different path right away. What did you think of that?
Well, I thought it was cool because it's totally changing the MCU as we know it, because, like you said, that Genesis event was Tony Stark becoming Iron Man. Mm-hmm. So when you take that off the board, what does that look like? But in the same breath, it proved how important Iron Man is to me, because I don't know if I'm as down for an MCU without Tony Stark Iron Man. Like Tony Stark and Iron Man. So it's okay. So my favorite Marvel characters are Daredevil, Spider-Man, and Blade.
Okay.
Right? Overall, Marvel Comics characters.
Okay.
And then the X-Men are in 4th place as a collective.
Okay.
But when you're talking about MCU, just MCU, Tony Stark is my guy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I respect his philandering game. This top tier. Just the suit's cool, the whole 9 yards. And his character progression. He eventually, settles with Pepper, and all the jazz. He saves the universe, as we know. Mm-hmm. So Tony Stark is my jam. But when you take that away, it kind of bums me out.
Right.
Yeah,
like I said, that one event change the whole course of the MCU in this timeline, that is. So,
yeah.
So we see that actually Killmonger is, very knowledgeable in the, art of war, obviously, and he knows sort of every corner of it. So he and Tony Stark, they build this like combat drone using vibranium. And they actually set out to create an entire drone army, but they need more vibranium. So they arrange for James Rhodes to actually get that from Ulysses Klaue.
Alfred Pennyworth.
Right. Okay, explain so everybody understands.
Okay, so Andy Serkis, who voiced and in live action played Ulysses Klaue.
Right.
He did both, even this episode. So he's done both, and who also directed the upcoming Venom, Let There Be Carnage, is playing basically Stephen, Alfred, aka Alfred Pennyworth, in the upcoming Batman movie. So that's why I called. So whenever Stephen says, or whenever Donnie says Ulysses Klaue, I'm gonna say Alfred. So don't get confused.
That's why I wanted you to explain it to everybody.
And also, the Watcher is Jim Gordon in the Batman. So when I say Commissioner Gordon, the Watcher. I haven't gone despite what my multiverse wives list suggests, I haven't gone crazy, folks.
Right. So back to the episode, we see that actually Klaue has leaked the word of this, illegal transaction to Wakanda, and this is done actually at the direction of Killmonger. Right. So you start to see levels and layers here of what Killmonger is doing.
He's very clever and very duplicitous, I find. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I'm going to get to some of that at the end here. So T'Challa shows up as you would think that he would, and Killmonger actually kills both T'Challa and Rhodey, and he makes it look like they killed one another.
Yeah.
But the manipulation at this point is going to another level. It's pretty amazing what happens.
Right.
Yeah. So eventually Stark figures out what happens, and he confronts Killmonger, but Killmonger then kills him and makes it look like he was actually killed in the Wakanda attack.
I think the MCU, the folks at Disney, are doing this to upset me.
Right.
Like, how many times can you kill off my favorite MCU character? Right. It's not right. You know how emotionally upset I was at the end of that Endgame movie?
Mm-hmm.
I appreciated the moment. He saved the world. Vindication, the whole 9 yards. He turned his life around. And then the I Love You 3000 with his daughter. Then you brought him back, at least with this animated thing. I'm like, we'll get to see some more Tony Stark adventures. And then you do this. Come on, man. There's only so much I could take.
Mm-hmm. So what we see here, again, Killmonger and Klaue are aligned temporarily. They get to Wakanda, but as you would expect, Killmonger double crosses Klaue and kills him. And
so hypothetically, we could have a situation in an alternate universe where Alfred Pennyworth is killed by the Val Zod version of Superman.
Okay.
Because rumors are that,
Okay. Okay. So now at this point, General Ross.
A multiverse.
Yeah, exactly. We're off on lots of tangents today. So General Ross sends the drone army to attack Wakanda. Mm-hmm. But you see here that Killmonger is actually in control of both sides of this scenario.
Oh, he's playing them like a fiddle.
Exactly. So he gets the Black Panther power. He's able to defeat the drones, and he's playing off Wakanda and the United States against one another.
Right.
So, this shows he may not, and when I say he, I mean Killmonger, he may not be, the most powerful villain in terms of like brute force like Thanos or like overall ability like Hela, but you could say he might be the most dangerous villain because he's the most intelligent.
Yeah, well, that and because like he does have like fighting prowess, right? So it's not like he's got the perfect balance of, I think, brain and brawn. Like it's a great mix. And if he ever did, if he was ever, without changing his ways, if he ever got a hold of the Black Panther mantle, he would be one dangerous individual.
Oh, yes. So we see, though, at the end of this episode that Shuri, who was very suspicious of Killmonger, she actually visits Pepper Potts. And they propose some kind of alliance and some kind of plan to stop him after he's, already been in control of this whole entire war. So that's how the episode ends.
The only negative I really have in regard to the episode is a design choice. I don't like the what they call it, of the robot, the gun. What is the Gundam? What the hell are they called?
No, it was. I think the which robot are you talking about? Just the
ones that Stark
droids?
and Killmonger come up with.
Yeah, I think they just called them the drones. I think the humanoid combat drones.
Like, he goes, I'm an anime. Tony Stark said they look like. He said a word, and then he's like, "What? I like anime, right?"
Right.
It's like the design just like turned me off. I would have been much more. It would have been much more appealing and enjoyable to me had they looked like Iron Man armored.
Right. Yeah.
But that's the only real negative I had. Another solid episode, I thought, and I like how Killmonger still finds his way into Wakanda and still comes to power, but it's through a different avenue than we saw in the live action.
Right. Very different. And I also want to point out here, too, a couple things that I really like. There was a very brief conversation between Killmonger and Rhodey right before he killed Rhodey. And he said, why do you wear the colors of your oppressors? And Rhodey looks back at him and says, you have to be part of the system to change it. Marvel, some people think Marvel is always fluff. That's not the case. I mean, you're looking at a very, a sci-fi commentary on a, very real world problem, of course, being, slavery and the oppression of African Americans and African people around the world. Later on, you saw that reflected again when when Killmonger is on, the ancestral plane, which is based on, I think, the Jalia from the Black Panther comics, by the way. And he and T'Challa meet up, and T'Challa's like, was it worth it? And of course, Killmonger's like, yeah, it's worth it. And T'Challa, again, he kind of echoes the same sentiments of, you've become what you hate.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of, again, it was brief, but it was a lot of intelligent social commentary there.
Yeah, no, it's definitely there. And, I used to have that kind of, after a certain number of films, I used to kind of have a similar mentality of, it can get formulaic at times, but what happened was I recently had done, I can't remember what movie it was for. It might have been for like Endgame, around when Endgame came out. I did a rewatch of the whole MCU. And then I started picking up on the nuances on the different commentaries on certain issues, right? And so the problem is, I think when you go back and you watch some of these things and you start looking at it with a different, like once you know what's going to happen in the movies, when you start looking at them when you look to pick up different things, you start to see the deeper meaning. It's not they're not being like overly preachy like some movies try to do, but it's definitely there in terms of the deeper stuff.
It's not heavy-handed, but it does make you think. So
yeah. So I agree with you there.
Yeah. So I'm going to say that this episode, again, was pretty close to perfect. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. You know, I love the fact that they went back and revisited this and showed you, just how kind of deep and layered Killmonger as a character is. So.
And also, I love how badass the mother was.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like, that was cool. And Donnie, did you not think that Killmonger was eventually going to kill King T'Chaka?
Oh, yeah. I was just waiting for him to double cross him.
I'm like, here it comes. And then he never did. I'm like, well, all right.
Yeah.
There's a twist.
Yeah.
I'm going to give it a 4.5. Only because, like I said, I didn't like the design of the drones. And so I'm taking a little bit off there. But everything else was great.
Right. So, so those are the latest. There's one more that we had this week, but this is the 2 episodes that we focused on for this episode of, is it the Marvel Masterworks? Is that what this is?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, Marvel Masterworks. We do a lot of podcasts here, so.
Yeah, it can get very confusing. But no, there has been another one that's aired, but since we're doing these reviews in 2s, we're going to save that for our next episode. But yeah, we seem to both be on the same page where we're loving What If. And we hope you are too, or at least our discussions about What If. Even if you don't like the particular episode of What If, maybe coming to our discussion and hearing all the tangents that we go on will make you enjoy the episodes. But until next time, if you want to talk Marvel with us, and specifically What If, you can on social media. So Donnie, where do they track you down?
You can find me on Twitter as the Emerald Enthusiast. Let's talk comics. Let's talk collectibles. Let's talk Green Lantern.
And if you want to track me down on social media, it's at Adam_LeafsFan on Twitter. We also have the at MMNPDC Twitter handle, which is where I mostly just post the links to the podcast and Vidcast themselves. We have a Facebook group, so if you go there, click the link, I'll add you, and we can continue the conversation there. But let's keep the conversation going, and remember that What If is forever. From the first piece. From the first bite, I screwed it up. What If is forever. From the first zombie bite to the last. So long, everybody.
So long, everyone.